the pule for tonight.
Oh, hi, everyone. Epuli kako. Dear Heavenly Father, please bless the people and all the minds that are joining us tonight. Please let us have a fruitful discussion, and please bless us with your wisdom and your knowledge. And also please bless us with your patience and understanding. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right, thank you, Andrew. Aloha and welcome everyone to round 2, part 3 of our beneficiary consultation for the DHHL General Plan update. My name is Jared Chang. I'm from SSFM International, and I will be the meeting facilitator tonight. Quick note, we are recording these meetings and we'll be posting them to our project website, the Project Open House website. So let's get started. Okay, here's tonight's agenda, pretty similar to the past parts in this round. We'll introduce ourselves and the DHHL staff. We'll cover some housekeeping items. I'll do a quick recap of where we're at in the process and what's been completed to date. And then we're on to tonight's presentations on healthy communities and natural and cultural resources. Then we'll try to close with a quick recap and next steps. Okay, you heard from Andrew Choi. He's the acting planning program manager from DHHL leading this project. He's supported by Julianne Cachola, also from the department. Is Julianne? I'm Jared Chang, like I said. I'm here with Melissa May, our project manager, and Malachi Krishok. The three of us are planners with SSFM, and primarily the team working on this project with the DHHL and all of you folks. Okay, kuleana for this meeting. This applies to all of us. Pretty simple, being respectful of others and showing aloha by not interrupting and also keeping yourself muted when not talking. When you want to speak, please use the Zoom raise your hand function or wave your hand furiously in your video and I'll see it and I'll wait for me to call on you before you unmute yourself. There will be times when we must agree to disagree, so let's all keep that in mind and that others may have a different perspective and opinion than ourselves. And finally, we are all encouraged to keep an open mind tonight and be open to new information or ideas shared. And one last note too for this meeting, I want to be sure to keep everybody on task. So focusing on the issues that we're discussing tonight, healthy communities and natural resource management, natural and cultural resource management. So if I re-guide you guys back to the discussion, fair warning right now for everyone. Okay, here's a quick tutorial on how to use Zoom. So starting on the left side, you have the microphone icon. That's how you mute and unmute yourself. Next to that is a video camera button. Turn your camera off and on. In the center of the screen is the chat button. I encourage you to open that up and keep the window open. And feel free to use the chat to share your thoughts or ask questions, and we'll do our best to try and get to them. Next to that on the right is the reactions button. And so that's where you open that up and you can click on the raise your hand function. When I see your hand, I'll see it in your video and I'll call on you. Please remember to also lower your hand after you've spoken. Thank you. Tonight we'll be using Mintimeter quite a bit. So we're going to use Mintimeter to check everyone in with your name, your email address, your beneficiary status and location. Malachi just posted the link to get into Mintimeter and the code that you need to get to the questions that we have set up for tonight's meeting. So you can go ahead and get in there now to check in and keep it open because we're also going to be using Mintimeter to collect your input on the proposed policies and goals that we're going to share later in the meeting.
Where do we start from Mintimeter? Sorry, this is Donna.
Yeah.
Where do we?
It's www.mentimeter.com. So if you open up the chat box, there should be a link in there. And you can just click on that link. And then also Malachi posted the code. So you have to put in this 8-digit code to get to the questions for tonight. And you can actually scroll through the questions, go back and forth to see what we're going to be asking. I hope that answers your question, Donna. Okay, great. All right, purpose for tonight's meeting, quite simply provide an update. Then we're going to jump right into exploring existing conditions, land use designations, and future policies for healthy communities and natural and cultural resource management. And the most important purpose for tonight is for us to listen to your input and to collect that so that we can incorporate that into the general plan update. Okay, let's get started. Where are we at in the process? Here's the update. This first slide here is a graphic showing the different plans that make up the DHHL planning system. At the top tier, where we are all at, is the general plan, which serves as a 20-year guiding document that identifies the vision, the long-term goals and priorities for DHHL and the Hawaiian Homes Commission. And as represented in this graphic, the general plan really sets the policy direction for all of DHHL's other plans under it, as well as funding, legislative, and land use priorities. On the bottom there is an evaluation program. So as part of this general plan process, we're also building in an evaluation program to update and monitor the success and the progress of the plan policies over time. So just one last word, this is a big opportunity right now for everyone that the department is updating the general plan because it only rolls around every so often, maybe every 20 years. So in this general plan update, the plan will set the vision and policies to guide the department for the next 20 years. This plan must also meet minimum requirements set forth in Hawaii Administrative Rules, Title 10, Chapter 4, Section 55. I'll cover them in the next slide. The updated plan will also have to include innovative and pragmatic goals and policies to be used by the department, the commission, and beneficiaries and decision makers. And finally, the plan will identify how to measure success, like I said, the evaluation program, towards the vision and goals that we set in this update. So here are the minimum general plan requirements set forth in the Hawaii Administrative Rules. We have a quick legend to identify the general topics for each requirement. So the green box at the top there is related to creating a uniform system of land use designations and related types of land dispositions across the state. The gold box next down there is related to establishing criteria for identifying homesteading lands and non-homesteading lands, lands for revenue generation, and lands for community use. The blue below that is related to establishing level of service standards for infrastructure and community facilities. And the purple relates to the need for an evaluation system to measure success. Today, we are focusing on 4, 6, and 8 from these requirements. Okay, hold on one sec. Okay, let's see. This slide basically shows an overview of the project schedule. As you can see, it's an approximately 2-year process, which started in 2020 with stakeholder interviews and background research and analysis of the existing plan policies. In March and April of 2021, we completed the first round of statewide beneficiary consultation. And tonight we are in the third part of round 2 of beneficiary consultation. We hope to have the third and final round of consultation in the May-June timeframe of 2022, and to get to a final plan before the end of this year, 2022. So in the second round of beneficiary meetings, we are exploring each policy topic that will be covered in the general plan update. and providing opportunities to hear from everybody to get beneficiary input on each of these. We have 4 sets of meetings planned in round 2. You can see what topics we're covering in each meeting. We already completed 2 parts. We're in the 3rd part. We had about 300 people participate in round 1 of consultations. So far from the first 2 parts in this round, we had about 190 people participate. Tonight's meeting, like you can see, will focus on healthy communities, natural and cultural resource management. And then in our final meeting in February, we're going to be focusing on revenue generation and economic development. Okay, last slide in the updates. So the general plan, like I said, is a vision-based document. And in the first round of beneficiary consultation, we focused on collecting input to develop a shared vision for 2040. So this plan is looking at what happens between now and 2040. We asked everyone to describe what success would look like in the year 2040 if the vision is achieved, and subsequently what principles were needed to guide us there. So following that, we developed a draft vision statement that included guiding principles based on beneficiary input. The vision statement right now is available on the Project Open House website, so you guys can check it out. On this slide, we have kind of a summary of what that is. So I'm going to walk us through what the vision statement is saying right now. So in the year 2040, the Hawaiian Homelands Trust and its beneficiaries will be thriving, self-sufficient, and connected to one another and to the Aina. And the overall arching theme for the vision is self-sufficiency. And within that, we identified a need for trust lands to be able to nurture and sustain beneficiary communities. Another need for beneficiary communities to be self-sufficient, healthy, prosperous, and grounded in cultural knowledge and tradition. Need for beneficiaries to be thriving on the land and engaged in activities that support the rehabilitation and self-determination of all Hawaiians. A need for DHHL to be sufficiently funded, transparent with beneficiaries, and collaborative towards achieving the vision. And finally, a need for all of Hawaii to support the implementation of the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act. So it's important to keep this vision in mind as we go through and discuss the goals and policies for each of these topics. That was the end of the updates. So let's jump right into the first policy topic, healthy communities. And I'll turn it over to Malakai.
Mahalo, Jared. Hello, everyone. My name is Malakai Krishak. I'm a planner with SSFM International. And the first policy topic we're going to talk about tonight is healthy communities on Hawaiian homelands. So let's get into it. So what makes a healthy community? We're going to get an opportunity to talk about this all together in a few slides. But before we do that, I want to provide a little bit of background information to inform the conversation. And since this is a general plan, I'll start with the American Planning Association, who defines healthy communities as places where all individuals have access to healthy, built social, economic, and natural environments. And this is to give them the opportunity to live their life to fullest potential. Excuse me, stutter sometimes. But when we're talking about Hawaiian homelands, as we get into our conversation, we're thinking about what makes up a healthy community. We might think about healthy communities as places that strengthen connections, that build community self-sufficiency, pretty places that promote physical and mental well-being, or strengthen cultural identity, provide opportunities or uses that protect and balama aina, or healthy communities can be thought of, as places that encourage participation and the building of relationships. So why are we including it in the general plan update? We're including healthy communities as a policy topic in the general plan update in order to identify what support communities need in order to be self-sufficient, healthy, prosperous, grounded in cultural knowledge and traditions, and whatever else we come up with for healthy communities. And the goals and policies that will be included in the plan, which, as Jared mentioned, we're going to talk about later in this section. Those goals and policies will be what guides DHHL's programming, land use decisions, as well as potentially the partnerships they seek out in order to support those needs they identify. In Hawaii, we have many groups and practitioners who are doing a lot of work on the ground in terms of supporting healthy communities and well-being. And they're also helping to share what that looks like from a Native Hawaiian perspective, indigenous models for health and well-being. So I just wanted to share these two examples here, which frame health and well-being and Waiwai community wealth as really being about connections, right? Connections to your place, connections to yourself, connections to others, but also connections to the past, connections to the future too. I want to bring this up because I think this really aligns in a way with Prince Kuhio's intention with Hawaiian Homelands Program, which is grounded in that idea of reconnecting Hawaiians with land and everything that comes with that, rekindling that connection. More recently, health and well-being have been talked about in terms of this resilience. So the city and county of Honolulu here on the left, they define resilience in their resilience strategy as the ability to survive, adapt, and thrive regardless of shocks or stresses that come our way. So kind of frame it in terms of the ability to be prepared for events and to bounce back. There are also resilience definitions that bring in an indigenous perspective. So this other example here is from Australia, and it talks about resilience in terms of individuals, communities, and the environment kind of adapting, working together and adapting to adversity, kind of reconnecting that idea of connection. Then on the right-hand side, just wanted to share this example from the county of Hawaii, and they're doing a lot of work around resilience. So this example here kind of shows the various capacity areas, they call them, but the various areas that make up healthy and resilient communities. So they include promoting social well-being, social services, social connectedness, includes education, include nurturing and sustaining culture through local knowledge, cultural practices. They also include developing and strengthening economic well-being or financial well-being. And then going back to, it kind of connects to the APA one, but the built environment, effective, resilient buildings and housings, but also planning and engineering for infrastructure as well. They include kind of future forward, encouraging youth inclusion, uplifting youth voices, representation within the community. And then, of course, managing and taking care of the natural environment, natural resources, which we'll talk about later in this meeting too. For this general plan process, we want to focus on how DHHL can support healthy communities on trust lands. Specifically, that's usually through land use. So if you attended the previous meetings in this round of consultation for the general plan update, you'll remember that land use designations provide the department with kind of a set of options they can reach into where various uses or activities or projects may be allowed. And that's how we frame it. So for uses related to healthy communities, the land use designations that would usually support these types of activities include community use. So these are common areas for community uses and public facilities. This could include spaces for like parks, recreation, cultural activities, even community-based economic development activities, or other kind of public facilities and amenities available for the community. But we're also proposing a new land use designation that is specifically for community agriculture. And that one's at the bottom here. And these would be common areas specifically for cultivating fruit, vegetables, plants, flowers, herbs, other food by multiple users in a shared way. It'll be a shared space. And we're separating it out for land uses because for agriculture, the land needs are not necessarily the same as what they would be for a community facility terms of siting and some of the required infrastructure. So those are the two proposed land use designations that would support healthy communities on Hawaiian homelands. And then these are just some examples of uses that support healthy communities currently on Hawaiian homelands in various communities. There's education, childcare facilities, healthcare wellness services, cemeteries in some communities. There's also public safety and social services located on Hawaiian homelands. There's places for the community to gather, whether it's a park or community centers. And then in some places, they also, the organizations have been doing community-based economic development, community economic development on community use land. And the department also has the ability to support healthy communities through its programming. And these are just a couple examples of programmatic and policy things that the department has initiated since the last general plan or continued. One of the big ones is the beneficiary consultation policy to encourage more, require more participation really for projects that affect the beneficiaries and beneficiary communities. That was adopted in 2009 and then in the new administrative rules. There's also been a shift towards or an emphasis by the department to provide more access to land and capacity building support for organizations who are doing work to support self-sufficiency. And then there's, of course, the Native Hawaiian Development Program, which focuses on capacity and skills, capacity building and skill development. So these might be some areas to think about when we talk about healthy communities and move into the types of policies that we want to promote that support healthy communities. There's also ways that beneficiaries can support a healthy community through participation of self-governance. And this is Act 302, which was adopted by the state in 2001, which promotes the idea that homestead associations taking over the governance of their communities. It could be by providing services, even managing homestead assets, or even handling some lessee matters. This is a policy, like I said, that was adopted by the state, but it has not yet been adopted by the US Congress to incorporate it officially as part of the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act. But we bring it up that it's a really important piece that kind of reaffirms the importance of a participation by beneficiaries and beneficiary organizations in carrying out the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act. And so this could be something that we can include in this general plan as a policy to make sure it's incorporated until the US Congress moves to adopt it as part of the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act. Last couple slides before we get into our discussion, but this is just a simplified kind of summary of some of the needs and desires that we heard so far from our beneficiary consultation related to healthy communities. So again, promoting self-determination and self-governance on Hawaiian homelands. We also heard desire for more support for folks to, for the beneficiaries to be able to thrive and receive benefits from Hawaiian homelands before receiving leases, or through programming or maybe access to land not in homestead use. There's a desire for supporting civic and cultural engagement on Hawaiian homelands, ways to steward and malama Hawaiian homelands through access, supporting self-sufficient communities, providing more economic opportunities through on Hawaiian homelands, supporting sustainability, creating space for sustainability and food security. And then resilience and climate change were not really addressed in the last general plan, but we have heard the need to incorporate resilience to hazards and climate change in community planning and within our community programming. And then lastly, just concerns around safety and security in homestead communities and the need for enforcement. And the last one here, just to tie it back to the vision statement that Jared shared. everything in this plan, we want, the policies and the policy areas all to come back. And the land uses all should come back to support some, if not all, of the vision elements that you heard from Jared. So for healthy communities, I think it most strongly connects to these two vision elements, with strong communities. So, activities that strengthen the lahui, build connections, promote health and well-being, and empowering the beneficiaries, with activities and opportunities for families and individuals to be self-sufficient and to thrive here in Hawaii and on Hawaiian homelands. So that was just the background, kind of some context around healthy communities, some thinking around it, what's currently happening. And now we just want to move into a discussion, and I'll pass it back to Jared to facilitate that.
All right, we're going to open up for discussion. We have about maybe 15 minutes. What we want to hear from you guys right now is, what does a healthy community look like to you and your ohana? And what else can everyone do to contribute to your healthy communities? So Keone had his hand up earlier, so I was going to call on Keone first. You had a question, I know that, but did you want to ask a question, or you want me to ask it?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, my question was what I had in the chat, which was, there's obviously value in allowing us to have a democratic process in our communities, but what's not democratic is if this goes through Congress and it requires those who are eligible to be a part of the democratic process need to meet blood quantum requirements, which is, an old colonial law that continues to divide our communities. And so I think that's the first concern I have here, even with some of the questions on Mintimeter, using language that, whether we're going to be good stewards of the trust's land is quite patronizing. At the end of the day, we're all Hawaiian, and we know that our kuleana is to look after the aina. But to have a question saying, whether we're going to look after DHHL's land kind of reminds us that, DHHL owns the land and we don't own the land. But again, in Hawaiian worldview and many indigenous cultures, we don't own land. We are only stewards of the land. We must take care of the land. So I guess, we're talking about healthy communities. I think it's really important that we are inclusive of all Hawaiians, whether they are designated beneficiaries or not, because there are many people in our ahapua'a who may not be necessary beneficiaries, but who will benefit and who are important parts of the community, whether they're working, for example, we have Keikoa here in Anahola, there are many people who are part of Keikoa, many who aren't even beneficiaries, but they help out in the community. So I think that's really important way to sort of take this discussion.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I wonder, Andrew, do you have thoughts on that? I think the question is, is there a process to allow people that don't meet the blood quantum to participate?
Well, first I want to acknowledge Keone's mana'o about opening it up to Native Hawaiians in general. Secondly, I guess to answer your question a little bit more directly, it depends on the association, right? And the whole concept of self-governance is the association would provide the rules for its memberships and who can vote and not vote. For instance, I know of several associations that encourage not just the lessee to participate, but also the spouse of the lessee to participate actively in their matters. And, it's up to that particular association to define who can and cannot participate in that process. So that's the whole part of self-governance. Just wanted to add that I do see a lot of value of in your thoughts, Keone. So thank you for that.
So positive and being inclusive for all Hawaiians. That's the message I got. Johnny May, I see your hand up. You can go ahead.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. I reside in Waianae. One of the established criteria to ID lands for revenue generated. I'm against gambling, and I don't believe we should use the Hawaiians to allow gambling on the HHL lands. There's no success about the Indians. It creates more social problems. Is DHHL the only government agency that have to generate their own revenue to build? You know, in Waianae, there's a small boat harbor. I know it doesn't belong to DHHL, but it's a kind of big parcel. Right now, there's unsheltered people that live there. And William Isle is familiar with the small boat harbor. So if there's a land swap for DHHL with that, it can create a beautiful cultural community center, which would involve, right now there's a canoe halau, that's it. But there's great potentials of fishery, medicinal plants, bringing tourism to the community. So it's a really showpiece property, and it's located right on Farrington Highway. William Isla is familiar with that piece of property. So if something like that, that would be a good vision for Waianae. In Waianae, there's a lot of social service type of programs. And if you all look at the Oahu general plan, then the community sustainable plan, if all of that is taken into consideration, and the lack of enforcement on the HHL land, for example, chickens, fighting chickens, okay, that's health and safety. That do not belong on homelands, but it exists all around. So as times get tough, more illegal activities gonna crop up on the HHL land. And you know, we need some sort of education to develop leaders and organization. On ourselves, it's a tough one. And if we are to lead, as beneficiary lead the Prince Kuhio legacy, we need to get stronger in that area, be more engaged in what we get to gain versus what we get to lose. So that would be my concerns to look at. And I just heard on the news that this legislation gonna give the DHHL a lot of money to shorten the wait list. So my distorted thinking is, are they doing that so we support gambling in Hawaii? It doesn't work for the Indians, and it's not gonna work for us. And don't use us as target. Just, you know, it's like bait and switch, or I give you this, you give me that. I don't, if we are to be independent people, that's not being independent. You know, that's being dependent. So those are my thoughts, and hopefully some good come out of it. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Just a reminder, you know, we do have the next part of this round. We're going to talk about revenue generation. I imagine the casino talk will come out a lot in those meetings. I did hear some snippets for healthy communities come out of Johnny May's comments, so that was great. Thank you. Let's go with Noelle and then Bernadine. Noelle, go ahead. Still muted.
Mahalo for having me. My name is Noelle Kalani Osha, and I am, I guess, the next generation of leasees in my mother's homestead home in Kalavahine on Oahu. And you know, when I think about what does a healthy community look like, for me, as someone who has young children right now, and then who has kupuna, it's kind of something that can provide for each of those generations, and you know, provide space and care for each of those generations. And in our ohana, I'm the second generation that will be able to have access to this home, but my children will not because of blood quantum. And I think that's, if we think about what a healthy community is, it's the ability to be able to stay home and come home. And for them to not right now be able to call this home because of what the legislation exists as it is right now at having to be 25% to inherit the home is a hard thing. So just really going back to one of the other comments that was made, as it stands right now, Hawaiian Homestead Act doesn't align with our worldview as Hawaiians as to what it means to be a Hawaiian. And until that is addressed, the health of our communities
What is a healthy community?
will be tarnished because you don't have a sense of place and home. So that's first and foremost, is addressing that. And then looking at generationally, the home that we were very fortunate to have. It was one of the first kind of cookie cutter homes as part of DHHL's plan to provide housing to Hawaiians. But our home has so many stairs. It's 3 stories high. And I think about aging in this home and how accessible that is. And it's not very accessible. So, when you asked about what can individual families do, it's yes, stay in the homes that they're able to get as part of this, but also they have to, it's not practical for the houses to be built in a way, if we are continuing to do, we're going to go with a developer to build the homes. We have to build the homes that they can be ageable in. They're age appropriate, because it's not appropriate to have a 3-story home for, a 60, 70, 80-year-old person to age in. So those are some of my thoughts. And, there's a lot of opportunities to develop lands in the area to provide wellness centers. And I think the Waimanalo Community Health Center is a really good example of that. I, from Papakolea, go and get services there because I just am so astonished about what it's providing. But that should be a staple across the board, that we have those health centers at every single one of our homestead communities. If we're talking about what does a healthy community look like, it looks like access to wellness. And that includes lo'is in every single homestead community. And, when you say, oh, should the individual be doing this? Yes, it can. Yes, we do want to be able to do this, but we're also caught up in this race of, our 9 to 5s and then this and that and this. So it's really us making those individual choices to come down. But the last thing I want to touch on is access to resources. Our homestead home, we only were able to get internet services that were feasible to support my family's well-being. My husband is a software engineer, and we moved home in July of 2020. And when we moved home, we had Sandwich Isles internet, and that was dial-up internet service. So when we moved home, we were we can't live here if we don't have access to higher levels of internet services, because our life is dependent upon that. And if we want to be healthy communities, if we don't have access to quality water, quality basics at this point, quality water, quality internet services, quality of life based on access to parks and recreation, that is not a healthy community. And I mean, I know it's a slow process, and this is a general plan for 20 more years, but there's a lot to address. And it does really start with the root of it, of kind of just saying how is the Hawaiian Homestead Act in alignment with being Hawaiian, and how are we perpetuating that on each of the levels, right, and the individual levels and so on and so forth. But I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and I do believe that it's possible for us to have healthy communities, and I have to hold that hope. I mean, I have young people in my life, and I have kupuna who believe that for us too. So mahalo, and be well, everyone. Please take good care.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. Good points. Bernadine, let's go to you. And then Roy.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Just a quick question. I know we're talking about healthy communities and so on, but just roughly what percentage of the total DHHL budget or goes towards healthy communities, just so we can kind of put it into perspective of the total budget? Is it last time you folks were talking about the housing and the food and so on, is it say 10% of the total budget versus say housing is I would think much higher, 40, 60% or so. But do you folks have an idea of what that is? Just so it helps us to kind of like, what should we be doing given the budget?
Currently, the commission allocates $1 million from the Native Hawaiian Rehabilitation Fund for grants that support community well-being. The total operating budget for the department annually is about roughly 28 to 30 million.
So 1 million out of the 30 million is roughly the spend on healthy communities. Is that
Mhm.
correct?
And
Okay.
in addition to that, the department does provide spaces for community associations to license or to other nonprofit organizations that help to provide services to our communities.
Okay. So pretty small in the grand scheme of things. 1 million out of 30. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Bernadine. Thank you, Andrew. Roy, go ahead.
Hello and good evening from Maui. I just wanted to talk about this healthy community, and it's fine that this is getting front stage now in DHHL's strategic planning and conversations. But I believe our community has been working towards this for pretty much about 10 years now. So our community, we have a website, and I think the most important thing about a healthy community is communications. And that's how come we have a very extensive website where we can interact with our community. And not only that, but our leadership is committed. And because of that, we have people that come to the meetings and put together proposals and things that we look at and see how that can align with our community's strategic plan, which we are doing. We had one for 10 years, and one of its things was to build a healthy community. But now we are, every 10 years, we're looking to upgrade that strategic plan, and we're in the process of doing that right now. That's how come I'm coming to this meeting, because I'm looking for better perspectives or a broader perspective to infuse in our community and our leadership. And the last thing that I think healthy community should do, or is helpful for it, is to pursue grants to get money into the community. We have one of the communities that has, from DHHL, from the opening of our community in 2005, we have had what do you call that? Dues, association dues. And, you know, there was pushback against that in the beginning, but now I think from what my past vice president said was the carrot and the stick. We have a way of offering that so that we can get payments from our association and not have them shut their commitment to the association, and we all work as a team. And the carrot and the stick is a good way of us helping our leasees to understand through communication that in order for us all to move forward, we all have to be committed to this healthy community narrative. I think that's all I have to rant about this evening, but thank you for letting me have the opportunity to bring this to your attention. And I hope to see some people go to our website and find out what our community is doing. And we will be interacting with DHHL in the coming years, asking for their commitment to help us with unencumbered land around our community to use for things like community gardens and for community centers, so that we can use our structure, our government, to move ahead with a democratic process. And what we're talking about here, which is getting everybody on the same page and moving as one community, and not a bunch of loosely tied. I don't know what to use as an adjective for that, but it's better for it to be everybody on one page.
Okay.
Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, good point. I like that example. Checked out the website. It's nice. Okay, Lanao, I'll give you 30 seconds if you can. Otherwise, we'll move on to stay on track. Lanao, you ready? This is not going to be the only time we're going to have discussion. So why don't we hold that thought and just move on into our proposed goals and policies in the next section, and then we'll have another discussion part. Go ahead, Malachi.
Oh,
Thank you.
sorry. I
Mahalo.
just
Go
wanted to acknowledge John's comment in the chat about the department should identify assets in communities that can be used to financially support homestead self-governance. So just wanted to acknowledge that comment. Thanks.
Very good.
Thanks.
Sorry, Leno. I'll get to you next next time.
Yeah, mahalo everyone for the comments in that section, and we're gonna run through these next set of slides, and we'll the Mentimeter that Jared mentioned. We'll have a chance to respond to the Mentimeter related to these goals, policies, and metrics, and then we'll also while we're doing that, have a time for people to share their thoughts, raise their hand, and have a discussion. So for this general plan update, all the policies will be included in the general plan in 3 ways. The first is through goals, which if you're familiar with the last 2002 general plan, those were included in the last plan. And these are broad statements that really should express basically where you want to be. And then the next level down is to have policies. We have policies, and you can think of these as kind of the roads that lead toward the more general goals. So these are actions or measurable steps that need to be taken in order to achieve that related goal. In the 2002 general plan, these are actually called objectives. For this time, we're changing the wording to policies in this update. So you'll see objectives and policies grouped together. And then lastly, we have metrics, which are basically ways to measure the policies and how we know if they're succeeding. And we're going to go over the metrics as kind of broad areas. We're not going to name the specific numerical target or quantitative target for it, but that's the next step that we're going to have to do in the general plan when we get there, after we identify the metric areas. So the healthy community goals, up here on the top in purple, these are the 2002 goals. They're to empower homestead associations to manage and govern their communities. And the second goal from the last plan is to establish self-sufficient and healthy communities on trust lands. And then down below, we have some additional goals we're proposing for the 2040 for this general plan update. The first one is to ensure both homestead and non-homestead land uses support healthy communities. 2 is to promote caring for existing homestead areas and planning for new communities. And then the third additional policy is to support resilience and capacity building of beneficiaries and communities on trust lands. So those are the goals. We're going to move into the policies now. And again, on top are the 2002, like I mentioned, they're called objectives, but they kind of crosswalk into the new policies. And the objectives from 2002 were to to build partnerships with public and private agencies to ensure reliable and adequate delivery of services to homesteaders. And the second is to establish and implement a planning system that increases beneficiary consultation, participation in development and use of Hawaiian homelands, and improves communications between the HHL and the beneficiary community. So that one basically led to the beneficiary consultation policy. And then we have some additional, more than some additional considerations for 2040. So the first one is to set aside spaces for community uses and services, such as parks, gathering spaces, etc., in current and future homestead developments. And also a second piece of that is to gather input on desired community uses during the island and regional planning processes. Second, additional policy, partner with homestead communities, nonprofits, the government agencies, and other elite trusts to provide needed services to communities. 3 is to promote self-governance of homestead communities by beneficiary and beneficiary organizations consistent with Act 302 until such a time Act 302 receives congressional approval for incorporation into the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act. 4 is to incorporate resilient practices in development and programming of community use lands. And then this last one is actually one that we are moving from the natural resource management section of the 2002 plan into this, because it fits a little bit more closely with how we're defining healthy communities. And this is to enforce health and safety standards and protect life and property from the effects of natural hazards and climate change on Hawaiian homelands. So those are the policies. And lastly, we're going to go into the metrics, potential metrics, areas that we would create measures for. And after this, we'd love to get your feedback. The potential metrics could be a number of land dispositions issued for community use and community agricultural purposes, the number of acres designated for community use and community agricultural purposes, the number of partnerships created with other service providers, the target number and the type of community facilities and services. And the last one is the number of communities with disaster and climate change preparedness plans. So I really encourage you to open up Mintimeter as we get into the discussion here. You can answer those questions, and then you'll also have the policies and goals and metrics in front of you too. So I'll pass it back to Jared for his facilitation.
Yeah, so that was a lot to take in on those last 3 slides. You know, we had the existing goals and policies, and then what we're proposing to be added in this update. To see those again, open up Mintimeter. So this is, hopefully you guys can all get to Mintimeter, you know, open up your web browser, go to menti.com, put in this code, and then you'll be able to see what Malachi just presented. And in Mintimeter, we're asking everyone to give us your sense of, do you support it strongly or not, or kind of middle, so that we get a sense on everybody's support for each of those policies. And while you guys are answering the Mentimeter questions, we're going to open up back up for discussion. The questions you can see on here, just getting anyone's thoughts on the goals and objectives, policies, or any of the metrics. And I'm going to let Noelle go ahead and unmute yourself and, you know, share.
Hello.
Hello.
Aloha. I've been thinking, you know, get plenty of people that want the Hawaiian homelands. I'm on the list. I've been on the list for almost 15 years. My mom passed away on the list, but anyway, as far as the goals and objectives of us moving forward, you know, we get keiki that we want to go to college and become very successful in their lives, but not all keiki can go. You know, some have to stay behind and take care of the kupuna. Some have to help with the payments in the household. You know, everyone cannot go. And that's life. But maybe through some of the grants that Roy was speaking about, we can come up or create like a vocational training. You know, in this world today, in the world, we are short. How many 18-wheel drivers? You know, the ones that carry the containers off the ships. You know, there's over 1 million drivers that the whole world is short. That's a trade. That's a vocational trade. You know, to teach someone how to work heavy machinery, that's a vocational trade. You know, and even like the building of the new Hawaiian homeland areas. Is there any way that some of that training can be provided throughout the tearing up the land, leveling the land, creating all these different things? It can be part of a vocational training. And that's another way to not only get grant money to help support all of this, but to teach another generation how to survive. Yeah, you may not have a college degree right now, but if you teach a man how to fish, he'll live forever. You know, and it means a lot because my children are adults now, and they work, but of my 3 children, 2 of them have college degrees. Neither one of those 2 work in the field that they got their degrees in. You know, but they still got to pay bills. They still got to live wherever they live and take care of the things they need in life. So if you have a young family, then the son cannot go to college or the daughter cannot go to college, teach them a vocational trade so that they can at least live comfortably for now until they can go to college and get the education. That's all I'm trying to say. You know, the blood quantum, I never really had to think about that part because I am full Hawaiian. But, you know, we're still all on the list. I agree with what, I'm sorry if I pronounced her name wrong, what Noelle said about her baby is not going to be able to inherit the house because of his blood quantum. I believe if the family met the qualification when they first was given that home, they should be able to have that home forever. Because no matter what, it started with the Hawaiian blood. And that was the qualification. You know, just having the Hawaiian blood should be enough. But I thank you for your time, and that's just my thoughts right now at this moment. Aloha, good night.
Thank you. Let's go to Johnny May.
Thank you for the opportunity. You know, I think to help also with healthy communities and perpetuate the culture, we have Waianae Valley Homestead Association. So if the DHHL can allot Homestead Association some kind of funding that perhaps they can come out with a yearly event to honor the prince, the king, the queen, also to have like health fairs and to reconnect and perpetuate our culture. If DHHL has such a funding mechanism to start with, for example, Waianae Valley Homestead, and then eventually partner up with other homesteads to have a yearly event. Because you know, today's environment, everybody seems to be silo, the lack of engagement. And what we do today impacts us tomorrow. So if we decide not to marry one Hawaiian, that's going to impact us. Nobody's saying to who to marry, but if you want to be part of this beneficiary process, that's one of the criterias. And there is so much funding for the Hawaiian people, unbelievable, millions and millions of dollars. People just need to be engaged with with civic clubs, neighborhood board. It's the engagement that makes us stronger, make us smarter, make us better. Although it's volunteer, you know, it's priceless because you're learning from people who who has college degree. There are so much benefits out there. You just have to get up and get involved. And that's how we're going to perpetuate our culture, because nobody's going to do it for us. The homestead is providing us the tools and what is rightfully us based on history, but we have to do the legwork. You know, my kids are settled, so they're not gonna live on homestead. Even my grandkids, they settled. But I'm concerned of my other relatives that don't have the same opportunity. And that's why I get onto these meetings. You know, it's not for we are set. We don't need homestead. We managed to buy outside. Okay. So, but it's my relatives that don't have the same opportunity. But there is so much out there. Just have to get engaged. The civic club, neighborhood board, and whatever passion you have to volunteer, food bank, whatever, is getting engaged. And believe me, the return is more than money. It's more than money. It's lifetime skills and knowledge. Thank you. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you. Very good. How about John? Go ahead, John.
Okay, mahalo. Aloha, my name is John Ka'ohila Lee, Honorable Hawaiian Homelands, Island of Kauai. And mahalo, I don't know who acknowledged my comment earlier, but mahalo for that, yeah. I was part of the Anahola Kuleana Settlement Plan. And in this plan, it depends a lot on homestead organizations for the success. But yet no lands were identified to generate income for the organization. You know, most of the future awardees are in their 60s and up, who got to haul water, fix road, and finance off the grid homes, you know. And so one of the things I was kind of disappointed is that in the process, there was no community space identified in the planning process for, you know, for income generating for the association, so that they can go after, you know, we're talking water tank, millions of dollars right there. So, you know, as part of the policy, can the department start looking at, you know, when you look at in Anahola, we get, I mean, the tourists got to pass us. So we have a private location. Not all homesteads going to have this kind of opportunity, but in our homestead area, we have the opportunity to take advantage of visitors going through, sharing our culture, and having opportunities for economic development. But that was never really addressed in the planning process. And so I was a little bit disappointed about that. I think it should be a policy that you guys should look at. Take a look at all the homestead all the homestead lands, identify the ones that could generate income so the association can pay people to go after grants, manage projects, and so on. And having a homestead organization with volunteer help, it just makes it harder for the to reach this so-called, you know, self-governance and reach this type of dream that we're looking for in the future. If a volunteer group's trying to nickel and dime themselves to get the grants, that's not going to help. But if there's economic opportunity to help fund positions so that these positions can go after these monies, I think we have a better chance for success. Mahalo for letting me talk.
Excellent. Yeah, and along those lines, I see a comment from Jojo, you know, asking what authority will be given to community associations, especially when there can be sometimes conflicting decisions on what to do with that. So policy and how you implement it is important. So I think those two go hand in hand. So at this time, Roy, I see your hand up, but I want to start looking at the comments we're getting. Well, actually, the results we're getting on the Menti. See how many of you guys actually signed on to Menti and started giving us your input there. What is that? 19. Not too bad, about half of you guys. So this is we're gonna go through this on this one and also on the next one, natural and cultural resources. So for the existing goals, looks like, you know, decent support, 4s out of 5s generally. How about the next one? these are the goals that are coming out of this general plan update based on all the input we're getting so far. So it looks like decent support also for this one. 4s, mid 4s. Getting a couple more guys answering that one, so pretty good. Let's see. The objectives: build partnerships with public and private agencies to ensure reliable and adequate delivery of services to homesteads. This one was below 4. Wonder why. The other one seems on par. Oh, no, it's a 4. Okay, great. So it looks like we're getting some good input there. Roy, go ahead. We'll just, be cycling through these so we can see the results. But Roy, you can go ahead and give us your comments.
I'd like to comment on the grant submission policy of DHHL. And the reason I'd like to comment on this is because I believe the outer islands are at a slight disadvantage to Oahu when submission of grants comes to DHHL's office. And the reason for that is we had a grant that was disqualified because of how we got it to the office. And there seems to be a lot of hoops you got to go through. And the grant was $5,000. It was a capacity building grant. And because of, to me, I don't believe this grant was very substantial. We've gone after bigger grants, but that's what showcased why the policy doesn't work for us here on Maui, and I believe on all the other islands, because on Oahu, you can actually walk it in on the very last day at the very last hour, and it'll be accepted by the office that it is DHHL's office that is running that grant. So what I'm saying is, I'd like to see things where we can submit grant paperwork by a digital method, so that we here, because of COVID and because we're on the outer islands and things like that, it kind of, puts a noose around our neck as far as, getting these paperworks into the department on time or on the time that they are allowing. And because of that, I'd like to see more kind of loosening the submission policy so that it can be done digitally, and therefore we on the outer islands are not at any kind of disadvantage when pushing that kind of documentation to DHHL.
Okay, that's
Thank
pretty
you again.
straightforward. Yeah, that makes sense. I assume right now you have to submit grants hard copy, mailed, or dropped off in person.
Yes,
Yeah, thank you for
these
that, Ray.
these past ones were done that way, were asked to be done that way.
Okay. I'd like to hope it's a matter of time before they get to electronic submissions, but good comment. Yep, that's straightforward. Anybody else? Otherwise, I think we've cycled through all of the goals, objectives, policies, metrics. Did anybody have any thoughts on the metrics? So these are how we're going to use to evaluate the progress towards the vision as it relates to healthy communities. Can we get, okay, we got the metrics up there.
So again, last time we met in December, you don't have numbers to it.
I'm sorry?
So you don't have, number dispositions issued. What is the target? it's just really generic. So you could put a low number in there and it doesn't really do much because it's a low number. So not having the numbers, it's kind of deceiving.
Well, we're trying to get to the topics first. What are the categories for metrics before we identify what are the appropriate numbers,
Okay.
right? Does it make sense? Are we missing a metric that we should be looking at to measure success, in this regard? That's really what we're trying to ask in these meetings. Anybody else?
Maybe one on education. Like a couple of people mentioned, expanding education, vocational training, that type of thing. It seems to be something that's in high demand. So maybe focusing something around education would be good. Like educating, I don't know, 300 or 200 people on vocational training, or helping them pursue a higher degree, something to that level where it's education focused.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, I like that. Not to put words in your mouth, but along the lines of grants also, we had a lot of discussion on sort of grants available or access to grants. So that might be another one.
Yeah, but grants is different from education, is specific to the individuals, the people, the kids, the grandchildren, and so on can get an education. Grant is more of a business. So something more focused on the individuals.
Yeah, I got you.
From, yep.
Okay, well, that's it's 7:15. This is about the time we were going to move into the next topic, natural and cultural resources. Not seeing any hands up except Roy. You still got your hand up, but
Sorry about that.
and we might have some guys that need help with Menti. So Malachi, hopefully you can take care of that while we turn it over to Melissa to take us into the next topic.
Okay, aloha everyone, thank you. Let's get started on this next topic of natural and cultural resources. And we'll start with a nice visual just to put in your mind the range of natural and cultural resources across Hawaiian homelands, across the whole state. Just, beautiful mountain coastal areas, Makatimakai, all sorts of different, landscapes, as well as all the things that inhabit them. So keeping this in mind as we go into the types of resources that need to be thought about. Go ahead, next slide. So DHHL does have a few plans and programs that support management of natural and cultural resources right now, and this is just a few examples. There's resource management plans for places like South Point, and there's programs to manage parts of Mauna Kea and various other parts of the state. And these plans lay out, a plan to help the department manage the resources and make them beneficial to the trust and the beneficiaries over time. Next slide. So this is a snapshot of the land that you could consider natural and cultural resource lands. You can see it's well over half of Hawaiian homelands right now. It's about 63% of lands shown on the map that are in green, orange, and yellow. And these are areas that are currently designated conservation, special district, or general agriculture under the DHHL land use designations. So all of these have the potential for, for being managed or used for natural and cultural resources. Next slide. So, given the size of the land that DHHL has, there's a lot of challenges, but there's also opportunities. And, with that much land in conservation and special district, with DHHL's, primary mission is to put beneficiaries on the land. And there are limited opportunities to do that in conservation and special district. That doesn't mean that they can't benefit beneficiaries. And that's one of the things we want to talk about. But how can they benefit beneficiaries and Hawaiians as a whole? And how can they be how can they be stewarded better than they are now. So ungulate and invasive species management is also a challenge. You know, there's these big areas that are damaged by ungulates and need to be managed. And historically, the department has had limited resources to do that, as well as to enforce things like trespassing, vandalism, dumping, and other activities. So that's been a real challenge, and a lot of beneficiary organizations, you know, are starting to have been really helping with that. And the department, you know, is looking at ways to facilitate more partnerships like that with beneficiary organizations, as well as nonprofits and other people who share that overlapping mission of stewarding the lands. One of the other issues that's come up is, you know, access to these areas by beneficiaries, and there's not always clear rules or a process for how to do that, or rules on what's allowed, you know, what kind of uses are allowed in these areas. So there needs to be better communication of that, as well as enforcement of, you know, when there's something illegal or unauthorized going on. And then, you know, opportunities for revenue generation, stewardship, education, malama aina. How can these lands be used in the interim, or, you know, in the long term, if they're not appropriate for homesteading toward these purposes? Next slide. So you heard a little bit about the proposed land use designations in the general plan in previous meetings, and we talked a little bit about it in healthy communities. So here's a few of the land use designations that relate to natural and cultural resource management. And special district and conservation already exist in DHHL's land use system. Special district are areas that require special attention. You know, they might have unique things like archaeological sites, or you know, hazard areas, or they might be coastal areas. So they just are areas that, you know, need special management. And then conservation are more environmentally sensitive areas, and that could mean watersheds, endangered species, forested areas, critical habitats, streams. And so those are generally areas that wouldn't be developed in the future. And then finally, we have the current designation DHHL has is general agriculture, but in this general plan update, we're looking to change it to stewardship. You know, stewardship kind of more captures the intent of taking care of that land and finding productive uses for it in the meantime that help create healthy communities and support beneficiaries. And here's a few examples of how natural and cultural resource management is currently occurring on Hawaiian homelands. So cleanup and restoration efforts, commercial forestry in some areas, such as up on areas of Mauna Kea, agriculture and pastoral uses, aina-based education, cultural activities, ecosystem and watershed management. And some of this is happening through partnerships with like the watershed, nonprofit watershed organizations on the different islands, who already go into DLNR lands and kind of manage forests and ungulates and put up fencing. And so some of that is already happening on DHHL lands as well. Those are just a few examples. And then also tying this back to the vision, you know, the 4 elements of the vision that we talked about previously, the 2 most related to natural and cultural resources are the sustainable trust. So making sure that, you know, there's land and resources and revenue to support future homesteads and homesteaders, and that the land and water stays healthy and provides, you know, nourishment for everybody environmentally and culturally. So, all right, moving on. So I think that, yeah, that brings us to the discussion. So I'll hand it over to Jared for that.
Okay, discussion questions. Welcome to answer anyone you think is on top of mind. Just want to acknowledge some of the comments we got in the chat. Like what Noelle said, that's about healthy individuals leading to healthy nations. Bernadine, we got your comment about the metric. That's great. And Desiree of Kahikinui, where exactly are those stewardship lands The idea is that the stewardship designation would replace general ag currently. Who's doing resource management work? Beneficiaries? Not sure. But anyway, let's open it up for comments. Donna, go ahead. I see you.
Hi. Okay. I just wanted to address a healthy community, the Kahikinui Forest, which is what Desiree was speaking about. I think in a healthy community, this is just specifically for Kahikinui, because we're unique. We have 22,000 acres. We have plans in place for forestry involving the community, homestead, and animals. And I forget your name, but anyway, she just mentioned about a healthy water system, healthy forest, because that's what it's a watershed area. We understand that DOFA, DOCARE, DLNR, DHHL, you know, we would like to see a healthy community be engaged with those acronyms, all of them, where we, the beneficiaries of the trust land, have a big say in how we manage the ungulates, how we keep the water clean. You don't eradicate animals because that creates a black water, and that is not healthy for runoffs down to the community. So I think we would like to see a better engagement with community members at the table, not just talk and then DOFA, well, we got to do the leeward, you know, haliakara. It's that the issue is we can have an input, but when do we can make a difference on how we manage our forest? And I don't see that right now. I'd like to see more of that engagement for management of the resources to keep the water clean. Because if you eradicate animals up there, I'm telling you, the dead animals will create a black water. Black water is bacteria, and there are bad issues with Department of Health. So, you know, let's do something that's right and for the community. And we have answers. We could also have our own cattle roundup, our own, and sell them. I mean, we have goats, thousands of goats, and that's a moneymaker. So I'd like to see more talking with all entities. And our commissioner, Randy Awo, has been real great. He's stepping up to the plate. But that's part of our healthy community, is to the natural resources, to be managers of the natural resources. Thank you. That's it.
Great. And that's in line with some of the questions Desiree is posting into the chat also about who's going to do the work. Can beneficiaries be trained to manage resources? All in line with the direction I think the department is going as far as beneficiary engagement and empowerment for your own communities. So very good, Donna. Yeah, I like that.
Right. Thank you.
Kaupo Ohana. Go ahead.
Yes, aloha. Yeah, this is Aloha Lani from Kaupo. I am questioning more on the east side of Hana. I've seen that some of those were for conservation and special management. Do you know like how much acreage is that? I'm thinking it's Wakyu.
Right now I don't have that. We can get that for you. So we can, the information would be in the Maui Island plan, which is on the DHHL website. So if you Google DHHL Maui Island plan, the acreage amount in that area and the number of acres designated for specific types of uses like conservation or special district will also be in that document.
Okay, and then I thought I heard you saying that some of the ag land is turning into conservation. Is that in Wakyu sector?
I believe if you can go back to the slide on the land use designations.
34?
Oh yeah, no, the one with the table. Sorry.
Thank you.
So what we're saying is, okay, I guess 2 slides. So see the stewardship designation. That's what we're trying to propose to allow more participation in stewardship of DHHL lands. Like Adana was saying, and Desiree was kind of getting at, is that beneficiaries and beneficiary groups need to have a desire to be more active stewards of these conservation areas. So what we're saying is, for the stewardship designation, if you can go back to the slide with the map, sorry. So what we're saying is, right now our land use designations include general agriculture, which is kind of misleading because it implies farming, but these are lands that are kind of dry, remote, and away from water resources. So it's not really farmable, but there is a large percentage of lands in this category. And more oftentimes than not, some of these lands have resource management needs that, if left without an active steward of these lands, can cause additional issues for DHHL and its beneficiaries. So what we're saying is, instead of calling it general agriculture, we should call it stewardship, so that we can promote the idea of engaging active stewards, beneficiaries, and other partners coordinated with beneficiaries to steward these lands.
Okay, and the reason why I ask is, yes, in that area, I'm talking about Wakio in particular, is that we do need better stewardship for the land. I know some of that also is for residents, but that working through nonprofits and partnerships is really an advantage to us. So I just wanted to check with that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, great. Let's see. We had some more comments. One from Noelle saying traditionally caretakers would live on the land. Is there potential for that type of arrangement to be reinstated? Got that comment. Another comment from Maxine. Nanette is asking, what are the sustainable energy activities or plans that the department is currently involved with beneficiaries? I wonder if that relates to use of these types of land designations. I don't know if Nanette, you wanna elaborate?
My question was about just energy wise. At a statewide level, there's this push to do solar, to change up our the way in which we both get energy and utilize energy. So I'm wondering, does the department have a plan for solar energy development and other types of sustainable types of management, I'm going to call it, of both the lands and the water, with respect to the push towards, using solar power, using electric vehicles, and utilizing our water resources differently. I don't know, because I saw plenty of beautiful pictures, like of rivers and all of that, so, I mean, solar farming is like, that's something, and that's just me, my opinion, should be something that the department seriously looks at, because I'm thinking that we could be leaders in that, in terms of how we push forward into the future. Yeah. That's just, so I was wondering whether the department has a plan to say, look at their existing beneficiaries, and then the ones that are still on the list and eventually going to get there, are we looking at them being, part of that movement? Does the department have a plan?
So the department does have an energy policy. If you Google DHHL energy policy, you should be able to find it. So that energy policy provides broad general direction to the department on how to promote renewable energy. It is over a decade old, I should add. I guess more specifically, when the opportunity presents itself, the department has looked at potential development, renewable energy developments on lands that are not suitable for homesteading, for solar farms and stuff like that. And those projects go through beneficiary consultation to see whether or not what beneficiaries mana'o might be on those potential projects.
So for, I'm sorry, so for example, places that the department has that's not farmable, but might be suitable, yeah?
Yeah, so yeah, not farmable or livable. I guess specific example.
Water is close, that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So that would be really, I mean, it's just me, that would be like nice places to do solar farming that could be something that's income generating for the department and for its beneficiaries, So that's kind of what I was thinking about, I could, and that would help, that would kind of be in alignment with what we are all asked to do in terms of the state's push towards renewable energy, would make sense. And for people that perhaps might be farming only parts of their properties, is that something that a beneficial, like for me, is that something, can I have a solar farm and a 5-acre solar farm? Is that something that I can do? Because, and I'm sorry, I never got, even though the thing is 10 years old, I still on the list, that's why too, so. I don't know one place that I could put one solar farm if I wanted to, but if I did, if I had a 5-acre parcel, can I dedicate 2 acres of that to solar farming and, farm taro on the rest?
I would have to say that if you were to receive a homestead lease,
I'm sorry, what?
I would just have, I think what you're saying is if you received a 5-acre parcel under a homestead lease, to answer your question specifically, the department does allow rooftop solar on homes, but I think in order to develop like a utility scale solar farm, you'd have to check the conditions of your lease. And we have conditions on our leases to just make sure that people take into consideration their neighbors when they do activities on their lands. So yeah, I guess to answer your question, it would depend on whatever conditions you may have in a future homestead lease on what you can and cannot do on your property.
So in other words, it is possible though. That's my question.
It might be possible, but it would have to depend on the conditions in your homestead lease.
Okay. I'm just curious about like what would has any of the beneficiaries asked for that? Like, in terms of what they do on it, what if they wanted to do a little solar farm and share energy with their neighbors, is that possible?
I think it's something we can look into.
Please look into it. Because I mean, I don't know about everybody else, but I see it being in alignment with what's kind of happening in the bigger picture, especially for areas that may not be, digging the aina and plant the taro kind of activity because no more water or no more this, so, it's not farmable, that's something that could really probably make a difference for many, many beneficiaries like myself still sitting on the list, yeah? Or, people that I've seen where I'm from, I'm on Molokai, by the way. When I drive through homestead areas, get plenty places that need help. You know, the houses are falling apart, you know, all that kind. And you know, that's the kind of activity that might help out the beneficiary, you know, might help out the department. Help the department first and then help the beneficiary. See, you help the department, then you can help the beneficiary. But thank you for answering my question.
Yeah, good question. Community scale, solar farm, or other infrastructure. Good idea. Linnell, sorry, we're gonna have to hold off on you for again, and we'll come back to you first after in the next discussion. There was a couple of questions from Ron and Doreen. Who has the power to designate lands as conservation special district or stewardship lands? That would be the beneficiaries and the department. So when you get to the island planning level, that's when you designate lands for different land uses. I think that's correct.
And then the plan would be approved and adopted by the Hawaiian Homes Commission. So
By the
yeah,
commission.
so ultimately, the commission would have the authority to designate the lands, but they base their decision largely on beneficiary input.
Great. And Jojo had a suggestion, all the EIS and previous technical study work for cultural and archaeological resources, share with Homestead for protection and education. Yep, great idea. I think that's a good one. So why don't we move on? Let's get into the goals, policies, and objectives and metrics for this topic. And Melissa, we'll turn it back to you.
This is only the first phase, but fighting.
Okay, great. So just a quick reminder, goals are broad. They reflect where we want to go in general. Policies are how we get there, and metrics are how we measure if we're succeeding. So there was really only one key goal from the 2002 general plan. If you remember, we moved another one of them up to the healthy communities section. So the main one we're looking at carrying forward from the 2002 general plan is to be responsible long-term stewards of the trust lands and the natural, historic, and community resources located on these lands. And it's a good goal because it's broad enough to pretty much include everything. So we're not proposing any additional ones at this time. However, if you see place for one, definitely feel free to suggest it. And let's go to the objectives or policies. So some of the objectives from 2002, preserve and protect significant natural, historic, and community resources on trust lands, manage interim land dispositions in a manner that is environmentally sound and does not jeopardize their future uses, and allow Native Hawaiian use of natural resources on trust lands for traditional and cultural purposes. And then the other one that's kind of faded out is the one we moved to healthy communities. So some additional ones we're looking at for this general plan would be a policy to protect water resources on Hawaiian homelands and to obtain more resources for dedicated staff within DHHL for natural and cultural resource management, because right now there aren't any. There are staff within the land management division that help prepare these management plans and facilitate partnerships, but there aren't any dedicated staff at the island or main department level specifically for this. And then incorporate and provide for beneficiary access to natural resources in special area management plans. Pursue partnerships to provide access to Hawaiian homelands for cultural and Aina-based practices. Pursue partnerships that support resource protection and conservation on Hawaiian homelands, and improve enforcement. So those are the policies we're looking at. And you can again vote on Mintimeter, give us your input on these and let us know if there's other ones we should consider. And then finally, some of the ways that we might consider measuring this. And again, right now we're just looking at, the types of metrics. Specific targets can come later. Right now, as we're looking at water flow, if we can find a way to monitor water flow and ensure that it's maintained and increased. Water quality being maintained or increased. So we'd have to set a baseline for those things and then monitor it over time. You could also look at the number of cleanup and stewardship projects with access to Hawaiian homelands, the number of beneficiaries participating in different practices, cultural and Aina-based on Hawaiian homelands, and the number of natural and cultural resource projects on Hawaiian homelands. So again, take a look at the Menti. We're going to go to the discussion and just get your general input on these, and you can also enter it in the Menti and look forward to your thoughts.
All right, get in that Menti. And then Linnell, go ahead. You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on some of the people were talking about land that's unfarmable and unlivable. Those would be like prime spots to me to have the training, the vocational training, you know, to teach. If they cannot grow kalo or ulu or, you know, other things that can sustain them food-wise, teach them how to move things. You know, I live in Keao on Big Island, and I'm fortunate enough to own a home, but I'm still on the homestead list because my children are entitled to be able to be homestead. But in the meantime, I'm still trying to help teach them how to grow kalo and to grow ulu, and, you know, teach them about noni and all the other things. But at the same time, you know, I see this need, like I said before, about the drivers, the heavy machine operators. And on these lands that are not livable or farmable, are they teachable? You know, can they be used like vocational kind of learning stuff so that these families can still prosper and raise their children? Who knows, maybe their children can go to college, you know, or maybe later in life after they've got their nice paying jobs, they can go back to college. You know, those lands can be used for other things. So that's my thought right now. Thank you.
Yep, good point. I get the point. I think maybe some of those lands we were talking about in that sense were designated for conservation. So generally environmentally sensitive. So certainly there's teaching opportunities there. Maybe not of the vocational type, but I think we get the point here. Great.
What does that mean, conservational?
Conservation lands, generally you will have sensitive environments for species or watersheds. It's basically lands you don't develop. You know,
on one of the slides that was shown, it shows the different, it was like a pie scale where it had all these little wedges that showed different things, different items. On my side of the island, on Hilo's side of Big Island, there's very little. So does that mean that there's very little Hawaiian homestead on that side of the island? Because there's a little black spot on the right side, right below the yellow where Hilo would be. Yeah, I live in that area. And we have so much land over here, whether it's privately owned or already situated for other things, I don't know. But I don't see much Hawaiian homestead over there either.
then that would be, you know, relatively correct. Yeah.
So there's still a lot of land, just not a lot of use.
Not a lot of trust lands, I suppose, is what we're getting at here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. How about Ron and Doreen? We haven't heard from you guys yet, I think. So go ahead.
Hi, Linnell. Linnell, can you hear me?
I can.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm Ron Kodani, and next to me is my wife.
Hi.
And we grew up in Puna, and I used to grow a lot of taro on quarter acre. We lived in Ainaloa. So you can also grow a lot of taro dry land. My wife and I, in the process of building a home in HPP, Hawaii Paradise Park.
That's where I live.
And as of today, I am not going to be living on catchment. We're drilling our own water well.
I have my
And
own.
for any Hawaiians out there that have potable water under your lands, I think there's a process that you can apply and do your own. Well, yeah, Andrew. Andrew, did you hear me?
Yes, I was trying to find the mute
Yeah,
button to
there's,
unmute myself.
I know there was a gentleman at KPFA that was trying 3 years before they approved him, Hawaii, Dagawai, to drill water because he was selling, he was raising tilapia, and he was very smart. Rather than killing it and taking it to the farmer's market, he would put them in tanks. And people just went crazy because they were able to catch their own fish. And they were so excited thinking that they got the biggest fish in the tank. But one thing I learned from Ki Ahuna, who's a driller, because we were talking about water earlier, and he said the state law, if you drill a well, you can share it with that water for 9 other people. In other words, you become a mini water company. So, and that's why, Andrew, I sent you that map on Maku towards the ocean. So I'm having the driller give me an estimate how deep the fresh water is and how much it would cost. But of course, you know, residential, my head is only 6 inches in diameter, the pipe. So key is on a commercial one, you need a bigger pipe. But if you can, like I was suggesting to you, do 2-acre subsistent ag, and on 500 acres, that's a lot of subsistent lots you can create right next to the ocean. So not only you can farm, you also can fish. So that was my suggestion to you to take a look at that, because you already have a lot of people from the mainland bought lots next to it and they build mega mansions with swimming pools. So I feel that they're drilling their water rather than depending on catchment or trucking it in. Anyway, Danielle, that's what I was telling you. If you want, you can contact me, and I have some taro I can share with you that you can try growing it dry land. Okay?
Oh, I get.
You got.
I get.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
good comment, Ron. I didn't know you could do that if you drill a well. So that's along the lines of what we heard from the net, you know, kind of sharing infrastructure costs or whatever. Okay, why don't we start looking at the results from the Mintimeter? Similar to the last topic, you know, we're trying to get your guys's gauge where you're at on the goals. Okay, pretty strong on the one goal existing, you know, that kind of covers all the bases, we feel. For the objectives, how many we got responded? Oh, 15. Okay. Not too bad, up in the 4s. So generally support, strong support, and actually. Ooh, okay, let's see, got the policies. Very strong support for water resources, protecting water resources. Not as strong support for obtaining resources for dedicated staff within DHHL. I did see a comment in the chat, you know, I thought was pretty good. You can maybe help tap into the beneficiary community, train them and use them for some resource management. I thought that was a good one. The others are still in the 4s. So improve enforcement was high. Pursue partnerships, not too bad. Okay, still in the 4s. How about the metrics? Water flow, maintaining that or increasing that, protecting water quality, high. Number of cleanup and stewardship projects is also a 4. Number of beneficiaries participating in cultural practices, little higher. And number of natural and cultural resource projects on DHHL lands. Are we missing anything? Did anybody have any ideas for us what we're missing? Nope. Anybody else wanted to? We're coming to the close of our meeting. We've got about 9 minutes left. I'm going to use the last several minutes to go over the recap. I mean, the wrap up and next steps. Any last thoughts, anybody? Noelle and Ron, you both got your hands up still, but I assume you said your piece.
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay, hope that was a good meeting. Why don't we go into the last, oh, Noelle, go ahead. I see your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to say how the health and wellness, the first point on this meeting was probably the most important, right? Because all these other things will trickle down if the community is healthy, and it's all related to the health and wellness of the people. If the land is managed well, we will be well. And that's just the truth of it. If our water resources are taken care of, if we have access to training that even allows us to develop our lands appropriately and to care for our lands appropriately, we will be well. And you know, like each homestead is very, very different, but still the same, right? We all homestead, and looking at on those smaller scales of what does it mean for each of the smaller communities, and how can we be supported by this bigger entity that you know, the Department of Hawaiian Homelands has access to, gathering us all together to advocate for similar things. So I just want to say I really appreciate the time that everyone who came on to participate in this meeting and provide insight and input to all of you all, because that's important. And for the DHHL for coming and reaching out to us. I know that, you know, like this is all extra for us to do as beneficiaries, and it's our kuleana to do that. But it's also not easy, and it is hard. You know, simultaneously as we're having this meeting, there's meetings in Keaukaha about development. There's water meetings that we're supposed to be learning from too, because our water resources here in Oahu are being threatened. So like, there's so many things going on at the same time for us to make the space and take that space to participate in this is a big deal. So I want to just mahalo everyone for being here, and mahalo the DHHL for calling the meeting, and you know, taking our voices into consideration.
Okay, great. Yeah, well said. I think what I learned tonight, everybody's communities are doing good things, and having the ability to share that with other beneficiaries and lessees is really important. So why don't we go to the last couple of slides just to wrap up and next steps, and we'll get you guys out of here at 8 o'clock on time. Okay, so just a reminder, we are also doing the same meeting tomorrow night for anyone that couldn't attend tonight. So it's the same presentation, same you know, materials, but you guys are all welcome to join again. And then we're going to wrap up round 2 with the last set of meetings in February on the 16th and 17th, same time. On those, we're going to be really diving into revenue generation and economic development. So should be very exciting. So hopefully you guys can all join us at those too. Okay, in this next slide, just a reminder, we do have a project website. That one shown on the top there will help you get to our website and virtual open house. You can find all the recordings from past meetings, all the minutes from past meetings, all the materials, and there's also ways to comment and give us your comments, especially on tonight's meeting. Okay, here are the points of contact. There's a project website that sits on the DHHL webpage. So from there, you can also get to the virtual open house. There's Andrew's contact information, his phone number, and our project manager, Melissa May, her contact information and phone number, which is also on the website. So no worries there. And that was the last slide. So a few minutes early. Just wanna really thank everybody for your time tonight. Really good input. And I will have Andrew close this out. Any last words, Andrew?
No, I just want to echo what Noelle said. There's so many other events across the Pai'aina going on tonight, and we're really honored that you folks decided to spend your evening with us and to take the time to share your mana'o with us. So mahalo, and if you folks know anyone in Keaukaha that were attending their meeting tonight, encourage them to spend their time with us tomorrow. So aloha, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, good night, everybody. Stay safe out there.
Yep. Great
Take
meeting.
care.
Bye, Malachi.
Aloha.
I'll perfect a mentor that minute, whatever.
All good.
Oh, Menti, yeah.
Yeah, that one. Okay, take care.
Okay, aloha.
Thanks, Donna.
You're welcome.
I'm going to sign off with the
Hey, Andrew.
commission meeting today and
Aloha.